The woman who went viral as a Karen for pulling down a teenage girl's miniskirt in a restaurant out in Utah has now accepted a plea deal. We're going to break this down with Utah criminal defense attorney Sky Lazaro. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Do we all remember this story? Because it is so bizarre, it is so strange that even after all these months, I can't make sense of it. I still don't understand what went on here. It concerns 49-year-old Ida Ann Lorenzo from Santa Clara, Utah. Now, that is about 15 minutes away from St. George, Utah, where back in April, in a restaurant, Lorenzo did something so odd. She was charged with sexual battery for touching a teenage girl's buttocks and trying to tug her skirt down. This was in a Japanese restaurant. Now, the aftermath of this encounter was captured on a TikTok video filmed in the restaurant that went absolutely viral, garnering over 15 million views. Lorenzo became famous, but for all the wrong reasons. She was labeled a Karen, which is a derogatory term for usually middle-aged or older women, particularly white women who have a arguably sense of privilege and they create trouble in public settings.
Why are you Oh my goodness! What the fuck is happening?
I happen to work for the state, and if I have to watch your ass cheeks hanging out again, I will call CPS.
Do it.
So I will.
Yeah, go for it right now.
She's over 18.
She is 19 years old.
Her butt cheeks.
You don't get to touch her. You don't get to touch her.
We're all sitting over there.
You don't get to touch her. Then you can come up and talk to her, but you do not get to touch her.
Really?
We would love for you to call the police.
Stop looking at people.
Go ahead and call the police.
Why are you? So why are you?
It's not appropriate.
Hey, I want to thank Upside for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. So Upside is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries. Now, believe it or not, I do know how to pump my own gas. And when I do, I can use the free Upside app. I mean, why not get cash back when you fill up your tank, right? And yes, this is actual real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So once you have the Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app and you get paid. Now, as you saw me just do, you can use Upside at places like Shell, Exxon, Mobil, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell. That's just to name a few. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's promo code SIDEBAR for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. Now, Lorenzo first called St. George police, but it wasn't to rat on herself for her crime. No, she wanted officers to help with harassment that she was getting online.
Hi, Ida. This is Officer Brown, St. George Police.
Hi, how are you, officer?
Good. How are you?
I've had better days, but thank you.
What's going on?
So I have a bunch of little 18, 19, and 20-year-olds harassing me. They got offended because we were at a restaurant yesterday in public forum. We were sitting on the bench waiting to be seated. It was pretty packed because, as you know, the senior ball was yesterday for most of the high schools. And so I was sitting with a 10-year-old sitting on my left-hand side, on my right-hand side, my boyfriend on the left-hand side, and nothing but the whole rest of the wall was filled with 17 and 18, or 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. And a bunch of girls walk in, they go to make their reservation and are waiting to be seated, and one of their skirts were so short that as we're standing there, I see the 10-year-old pointing to one of them, and you could see her entire and the butt cheeks and everything hanging out. And I mean, we were just sitting there, and I was shocked. I haven't worked for the state of Utah, and I was like, oh my God, that is completely inappropriate. We do not need to be sitting at a restaurant having a 10-year-old look at someone's private part. So I got up and I scooted her skirt. Got the skirt and I scooted it down to cover her private part. And the dad that was with the 10-year-old, he was like, thank God. And I was like, oh my God, is everything okay? And he's like, I would be accused of sexual harassment if that had happened. And so as I did that, everyone around me, that we were sitting, they were all minors. The little girls were like, we shouldn't have to see that. Can't they get in trouble for that? And I was like, at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I probably, should report this or something. And next thing I know, as I'm sitting there listening to all these little teenagers around me, I'll applaud us for at least no one wants to see that, right? And they don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. But we shouldn't have to see someone's private parts in a restaurant. So next thing I know, as we're sitting there and we're discussing it, a bunch of the girls' friends come in and they start talking pure about me because I did that. So I finally, my boyfriend and I were discussing how to best approach that. And he's like, should we do something? Should we call the police? What should we do? And I was like, no, there's just a bunch of silly little teenagers. I didn't think anything major was going to come out of it, but they started to make threats. So I finally got up and I was like, listen, I shouldn't have to sit at a restaurant and look at your private parts. It's plain and simple. And I tried to explain to them the Department of Child Protective Services, and because there was a 10-year-old sitting next to me, and he's the one that pointed out that we could see your private parts, I didn't even get that far, because the next thing I know, I felt like the whole gang of women and their boyfriends, I actually, at that point, my boyfriend was like, I'm afraid they're going to hurt you or hurt me or something. So I finally just was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to sit back down. So I sat back down and I was like, we discussed it, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to let it go. Surely they're not stupid enough to do something dumb. Well, today I got, and I do have screenshots, they started trying to find out on a public forum who I am, my private information. They have since posted on the St. George, I guess, word of mouth, a video of me confronting them, trying to explain to them what happened, but they snipped it and they've put their own twist and agenda on it. So people have actually started to reach out to me to threaten me and all kinds of things because I work for the department. So that is a really big issue for me because my teenager happened to be at the restaurant last night. He is a minor, and I most certainly do not approve. I mean, I should have called the police at that point. I should have reported it, and you guys could have just done whatever you needed to do. But that wasn't going to resolve the issue, that it would have taken you probably forever to get there. Nothing would have been done, and off they would have gone. And the 10-year-olds and everyone around would have continued to have looked at the woman's private parts with no one being able to do anything about it. And to me, that isn't right.
When you're saying threats that were made to you, you said threats twice. What are those threats?
They're basically, they posted it on a public forum so that that way I can be fired because they feel that I'm a Karen and it's not acceptable that I approach them. On top of that, they're threatening me of sexually inappropriately touching her in her butt. And on that social forum, they posted my job description and everything. So my information is basically, they're trying to get me fired. And accusing me of sexually inappropriately touching one of them.
Did you touch her?
No, I didn't.
I thought you said you pulled her skirt down.
I did. I touched her skirt, but I didn't touch her.
I mean, we can talk about that later, I guess. But after you send me that video, I'll review it, and I'll give you a call back in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
And Lorenzo went on to describe the girl's private area in a pretty graphic detail, ending with this.
The skirt was so short that it had crawled up her buttocks. It was exposing everything.
It's like no underwear?
No underwear.
Lorenzo ended up coming into the police station the next day, irritated that the online harassment hadn't stopped as her story started to go viral. And she spoke with the same officer for about an hour.
So these little girls have continued to incite a mob, and I've been harassed all day. Not only did they took it down from St. George Post and her Facebook, but now she put it on Instagram, and now she put it on TikTok.
Okay.
No, remember you looked at my Instagram account, and they've been harassing me all day. So I turned notifications off and everything. I'm 100% in believing in freedom of speech and free, but when you omit, delete, and make it seem like one situation is totally different than the other, and then accuse me of sexual harassment without the facts, like at some point something needs to be done, it needs to be stopped, and they have a reputation for doing this. But because of the sensitivity of the nature, and everyone thought she was a minor because she did look like a minor, and there was a ton of kids. It was the high school ball.
Did you think she was a minor?
Yes, I did. I actually thought she was, and that's why I was like,
I just don't
so
understand.
he
I
got
don't understand why you
charged.
went up and touched her.
I didn't touch her as a person. Like,
I mean, you
I,
confronted. But you see how that looks, right?
I got a standing ovation from everyone that was seating behind me.
That's totally
because I
beside the point legally.
covered
So
all
I understand that
perception.
there's inappropriateness with how she's dressed. I can totally understand that portion. I can understand that things got blown out of proportion, and I can understand your standpoint from it. But I guess, what do you want me to do?
Well, the posts need to come down, and they need to
That's freedom of
stop.
speech. There's no crime.
Not when
They can say whatever they want.
No, but I mean, they're reaching me. All their little friends.
Have you told them to stop talking to you?
No,
Try
because
that.
Now, the victim, a 19-year-old, called police in the following days and said she wanted to report that Lorenzo touched her. She and a few of her friends came to the police station to give their side of the story.
She came up, reached her hands, her cold hands went up my skirt, and I felt her hands up my skirt, and then I felt like a tug. And like my skirt doesn't go down much farther, like it's not that short of a skirt. And so I felt this tug, and I like whip around thinking it's one of my friends or something. And I'm just kind of standing there in shock, so I'm like, here's this woman I don't know who just came up and touched my bare butt. Like, I have no clue who this is. And like, not even the physical side of things, but mentally, like I'm struggling so much with weight problems. And for her to come up and do that and make me feel even more insecure in my own body is outrageous to me. So she came up, did that, and then she touches me, or she does that, and then she says, you're underage, you should probably hide that. If you think I'm underage, why are you touching a minor at all? Especially if you think I don't have underwear on.
Yeah, the logic wasn't there.
No.
For me.
No.
That's why I was wondering when you mentioned that you thought she might be drinking. I thought there was a judgment issue maybe going on too.
Right.
And then she came back up a second time after Avery came up. Our other friend Avery, fun fact, same name, she was standing right next to her. And the second time she came up, she touched both their hips and squeezed them.
Like pinched us.
And said she was going to call Child Protective Services if she saw
And then the
butt
rest
cheeks
was on video.
I saw the video, and I think
Yeah.
57,000 other people saw it too.
Yeah.
The victim says not only was she wearing underwear, but she was also wearing a pair of shorts under the skirt. She gave the police a video of her in the skirt so they could see how long it was. The officer had Lorenzo come back to the station to fill out some paperwork, getting her recollections down in writing, and then let her know that she was going to be arrested and booked for a charge of sexual battery.
After listening to everything Tortelli about everything going on, I've talked to Sakura, I got some of their video, I've got the TikToks. I think most everybody in the city has that TikTok. And then we've got your statement, her statement, so I'll try to make it as unbiased and fair as I can, right? I do have some concerns from what I've been told by them. Obviously, some things you've also told to me, right? Even when we talk two wrongs don't make a right, when we were talking about that, I said, there's criminal behavior that's happened, regardless, because there's video footage and because of the claims made, and I have to protect victims. Today, you're going to be placed under arrest for sexual battery, okay? So that's the unfortunate side of all this.
You're arresting me?
Yeah, right now you are under arrest, okay? So if you'll just face my sergeant and you put your hands behind your back.
Don't reach in your purse, please.
No, I was just trying to put that.
Just follow those instructions.
And just relax your hands, sir.
Do you have any vehicle here?
Yeah.
Is something with
No.
We can keep it
you need
protected
to
here.
call, come get your car?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there somebody we can call for you to have them come pick up your vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now Ida Lorenzo has entered a plea agreement. Yes, she has agreed to plead no contest to the misdemeanor sexual battery charge, and we're going to explain what it means to plead no contest in a minute. But her plea will be held in what's called abeyance, or will be suspended for a year. She just has to make sure she doesn't break the law, that she doesn't have any contact with the victim in this case, and she agrees to undergo a mental health evaluation. And if she does all that, the case will be dismissed. If she doesn't, a warrant could be issued for her arrest, and she could end up spending 6 months in jail. Now, what does this plea mean? Why did she do it? What could this mean for the rest of her life? After all, as a result of this incident, She lost her job as a legal consultant for the Utah Attorney General's office. Does this go on her record? What's going to happen next? I am made of questions when it comes to this story. All right, so now we welcome on Utah criminal defense attorney Sky Lazaro back here on Sidebar. Sky, it's good to see you. You would never do something like this. I mean, right? Shocking. It's still shocking to me that this happened. I still can't make sense of why it happened.
I can't either. I mean, whether you think someone's dressed appropriately or not, you don't go touch anybody else. I don't care who you are.
It felt like almost she was trying to be like, I don't know, like the adult in the room, or like, I don't know, like the mother. I don't know what it was. It was just so crazy. It was so wrong. And by the way, I use that word not lightly because I'm going to mention why I say that in a second. But let's go back to the law on this. So she pleads no contest. Well, I don't understand. What's the difference between pleading no contest to this versus pleading not guilty to this? Or pleading guilty to this?
Right. So a no contest plea or an Alford plea or whatever you want to call it in the legal system, essentially is just a plea that says you're not contesting the facts that the state would prove at trial. So you're basically saying, okay, if the state were to present all of these facts, a reasonable jury could find me guilty. Therefore, I'm not admitting that I did it. I'm not accepting responsibility for it, but I'm not contesting that I think if the state presented it, the state would, or a jury would find me guilty of it.
In other words, she can go on an interview tomorrow and say, I didn't do anything wrong. This didn't happen.
Right. And the other benefit to a no contest plea is it can't be used in civil litigation against you like a guilty plea can.
It's not always put on the table. It's not always offered by the prosecution.
It's not. That's at the discretion of the prosecutor and usually with input from the victim.
Yeah, and it's a misdemeanor, so it's a crime, but it's not the most serious of crimes. I will say I thought it was really interesting, going back to the word that I used before, that it's almost nonsensical how this could happen. But the idea that part of this deal is she has to undergo a mental health evaluation, is that standard in these kinds of deals, or is it very particular to her?
I think it's case specific. I think when prosecutors start looking at giving deals, and by the way, this is also a plea in abeyance, so she's not going to have a conviction on her record as long as she complies with all of these. Once she gets through this plea in abeyance period, her no contest plea is going to be withdrawn and the case is going to be dismissed. But with regard to the mental health requirement as part of this, I think in a case like this, like you said, this is wrong, who would do this? I think that's what the prosecutor's looking at when he's like, maybe you should go talk to someone about why you felt it was appropriate to do this to this girl.
What does a mental health evaluation in this kind of case mean? Is it one evaluation? What are they evaluating? How does it work? Who are the results sent to?
Right. It's one evaluation. They have to go to a licensed provider within the state of Utah. They go through their assessment. I think there's a number of things that they look at based on whatever DSM access we're on right now. And at the bottom or the top or the bottom, usually after they go through those, there'll be recommendations and there'll be a diagnosis. So they may say she doesn't have any clinical mental health diagnosis, but based on this behavior, maybe she should go take a thinking errors class or something along those lines to maybe address why she would have done this in the first place.
Can they order her to get treatment? What do I mean by that? I mean, let's say that this evaluation determines there really is a serious mental health crisis here, a mental health issue. Can the court force her to get mental health treatment? How does it work?
They can. I haven't seen the actual document for this agreement.
Sure. Of course.
But typically speaking, it would be the mental health assessment and any recommended treatment. So and that mental health assessment gets sent to the court and the prosecutor. So it's not a public document. It's filed privately, but the court gets it, the prosecutor gets it. And then in order to fulfill the terms of this plea and abeyance agreement, she would have to complete the recommended treatment. If she fails to do that, that is a material violation of the agreement, which they can then withdraw they could enter the conviction against her and then sentence her.
By the way, if she fails to abide by the terms of this agreement, and she doesn't, for example, seek a mental health evaluation, she could spend 180 days in jail. But do you think that's what would happen here in a case like, let's say she violates it? Would she get 6 months in jail for that?
I don't foresee anybody going to jail on this unless she violates it by committing a similar act or committing a new crime or something along those lines. I think if she just doesn't go get the mental health evaluation, and by the way, she's also entitled to a hearing on that because she has due process rights. So they would have to have an evidentiary hearing to show that she didn't do what she was supposed to do. The judge found that, then he would enter the conviction against her and then sentence her. My guess is the sentence is probably going to be something similar to what the plea in abeyance conditions are. Like I said, unless she does something like completely outlandish and does this to another girl.
By the way, and she, like I said, she can't break the law. She can't have any contact with the victim in this case. I honestly feel, Sky, like her losing her job from this going absolutely viral, because one TikTok video of this encounter generated over 15 million views. For me, that almost feels like it's worse punishment, right? In the grand scheme of things.
I agree. I mean, she worked for the Attorney General's office. You know, she worked for a prosecutorial office for the state of Utah. And so, you know, she's not going back to work for another state agency. She's probably not going back to work in any sort of prosecutorial type office. So, and plus the embarrassment, St. George is a small community down there, you know, and it's pretty tight. I mean, this got, you know, you're talking about it, so this got national attention, but she's got to live down there. So,
well, that was what I was going to ask you. If you were her attorney and you were advising her right now, what would you tell her to do? How could she move on from this? I'm not sure if a no contest plea, would that go on her criminal record? Would it keep her from getting some sort of job moving forward? Aside from, I'm assuming this was very national, I would imagine employers might think twice, but how does this deal affect her ability to get employment? How does she move on with her life? What would you be advising her right now?
You know, the no contest plea helps. I think sometimes those are viewed, those can be viewed one or two ways. You know, when I talk to clients about it, it's like, well, you don't have to admit it, you know, but then people look at it and say, you know, you just took the deal to move on and whatever. This will show up on a background check. Now, once she completes the plea in abeyance period, she can file for an expungement once it's, you know, if she does everything, it's dismissed. She would be eligible for an expungement and then it would be sealed. But up until that point, this is going to show up on a background check. And, you know, my experience, just having represented a lot of people with it, you know, alleged with sexual crimes, it's tough to get a job with that on your record. Like I said, she's not going to work for a state agency. It's hard. I mean, you tell people to kind of bite the bullet and get through everything and get it expunged as quickly as you can and move on. But, you know, that's really about all you can do with it.
It did make a lot of headlines, was all over social media. But look, it's a conclusion to it. Hopefully everybody moves on from it. Just a really disappointing and kind of bizarre case, to say the least. But Sky Lazaro, thank you so much for coming on. Good seeing you.
Thanks, Jesse. Good to see you. Take care.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.